Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, your home for Pittsburgh Penguins news and analysis. You can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe with our channel, or you can find us anywhere you get your podcast from. The Pittsburgh Penguins, well, they have a successful road trip, and they come home even at 2-2 on the season. We'll talk about some of the major storylines that cropped up over the past couple of days, including the biggest storyline of the season getting even more interesting, which is between the pipes. Who is playing goalie for the Pittsburgh Penguins for the foreseeable future? That is certainly in question. Plus, the bottom six off to a hot start. Did Kyle Dubas actually hit the right buttons this offseason when rebuilding that unit? And then, of course, we'll finish it off with our weekly Pens poll. Let's get started. And before we get started with, obviously, the goaltending being the biggest question surrounding the Pittsburgh Penguins going into week 2 of the season, I thought the Penguins had a pretty good road trip, right? They go 2-1, first road trip of the season. Last time we recorded was immediately after that 6-0 blowout loss in the home opener. I thought they settled down well, and I thought they played some pretty good hockey in all 3 games, not just the 2 wins that they got in Detroit and Montreal. I thought they played well on Saturday night against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Overall, 2-1 on that road trip and kind of back to center for the Pittsburgh Penguins as they return home.
You'll take a 2-1 on that road trip because the Leafs are just good. The Leafs are just a really good regular season team. And again, no knock against Joel Blomqvist, but it was a shock to see him go into that game. And I don't think the expectations for the Penguins were super high. I mean, they're not going to be most of the season, but you're starting your third string, essentially your third string goalie against one of the highest scoring offenses in the league. I mean, what exactly did you expect, especially whenever you are a new team, mostly still learning the ropes of each other? But you're right. Even with that said, they still played pretty well in that game, still started off pretty good, and don't let the power play get hot. That's another thing that's been rolling in the proper direction. It's a good start to the year on that road trip of Montreal, Toronto, and I'm forgetting the first one, but you take that.
Detroit, yeah.
In Detroit. Yeah, you take that, though. You take that couple home openers in there where the vibes are much higher than a normal game in Detroit or a normal game in Toronto. You go in there and you don't clean up shop, but you do pretty well. And that's a good way to start the season, especially after just the poor start against New York.
Yeah, and the one thing, and again, 4 games into the season, this is not enough for us to say, hey, that's what the Penguins are going to be this year. 3 of those 4 games, I'd say they got off to the better start. I feel like they've at least dictated pace of play in 3 of the 4 first periods so far, and that's including the New York Rangers period, where I thought they looked good. Despite being down 1-0 through the majority of it, up until that last 5 minutes, I thought they outplayed the New York Rangers. Now, again, the rest of the night, they did not outplay the Rangers, but I think that followed suit in not Detroit. I thought Detroit came out like a house fire, then the Penguins settled in, but that's how they came out against Toronto. That's how they came out last night against the Montreal Canadiens as well. So a nice little change of pace for the Pittsburgh Penguins, getting off to fast starts instead of warming up to the action like they've done in previous seasons. But let's move over and talk a little bit about this goaltending question, because we knew coming into the season that this was going to be one of the biggest question marks surrounding this team all year long. I didn't expect an answer in the first week of the season, but it feels like there's more questions now than there were 6 days ago when they dropped the puck against the New York Rangers. Jarry gets blown up in the season opener. Joel Blomqvist, who everybody expected to start that second game due to Alex Nedeljkovic's injury, he starts, makes his NHL debut, plays well, and gets the victory. And then, like you mentioned, surprisingly, gets the start in Game 3 on Hockey Night in Canada in Toronto, plays well again, makes a couple of 10-bell saves there. Were a couple of rookie mistakes, but like I said yesterday on the power rankings, more 10-bell saves than there were rookie mistakes, and you're never going to be mad with that split. The last one there sparked a lot of debate. Was Mike Sullivan riding the hot hand? Was he just trying to get more of a look at Joel Blomqvist before Nedeljkovic comes back, let the kid get a little bit more of NHL reps under his belt? Or was it that he trusted Jarry less after that blown up first game? Well, Elliot Friedman of 32 Thoughts and Sportsnet weighed in on this yesterday on his episode, saying, quote, I think the Penguins at times have considered their options here. They've talked to other teams about Jarry. Obviously, nothing has happened, but it has occurred, as Friedman said. Then he went on to speculate that they want to see Tristan Jarry be more dependable in net. And I think that is something everybody can agree with. But with all of that speculation, with all of those questions, Jarry comes out last night, has an opportunity for a response. Pens get the 6-3 win in a game where Jarry sometimes looked a little uneven. What have you thought of this saga so far? It seems like a lot of drama. It seems like the drama is only going to increase from here. But what did you think of this saga so far? And what do you make of Jarry's response last night in the win over Montreal?
Welcome to another regular Pittsburgh Penguins season where there might be goalie controversy.
Yes.
Just run-of-the-mill stuff. That being said, what you read there, and there was still more to it, and from Elliot Friedman, where he alluded to, and I think we could have all seen this coming last season, the Penguins aren't going to be upset if Tristan Jarry is a little uncomfortable with his position as starter. If he's a little uneasy that maybe there's something in the works, maybe he's going to lose his job to Nedeljkovic or maybe even Joel Blomqvist. And to take it even further, Josh, you already mentioned that there seems to be just an open competition. Open competition to have to start the regular season is nuts, especially for that position. But when it's 3, 2.5, maybe 2 reliable names in terms of you've had reliability in Tristan Jarry before and can be NHL caliber. You are clearly relying on Alex Nedeljkovic last year. And now Blomqvist is coming up and showing himself. Maybe he's the NHL name that isn't quite there yet, but you're showing your confidence in him early, and you might have to play him a few more times. The saga now turns to, our team's going to call about Jarry if that option is still out there, because that's going to be the center of attention too. The saga is going to be how everyone plays, yes, because the Penguins need wins, they need a good goaltender, but also it's going to turn into, it's plausible that teams carry 3 goalies in the NHL these days. I don't think the Penguins want to do that.
No, I don't think so either.
Not with these 3 specific options. Not with big money in Tristan Jarry. Not with Alex Nedeljkovic as your likely starter. And not with the graduating prospect that you want to see on the ice. You want to see him playing. So while certain teams can get away with it, the Penguins can't. They're not in that situation. So the trade talk is going to get louder. It just is. And especially the way Friedman said, they may have dangled him out there a couple of times. I think Josh, you always said straight up, just no one called back. And I don't blame them, but
yeah,
that will be something to keep an eye on. The saga is going to be centered around how well are those 3 playing, but also who's calling? Is anyone calling? And who's willing to take it? That's a big contract still.
Yeah. I mean, those are kind of like the questions for the Penguins right now. Will Jarry be traded? That's the biggest one that is kind of on everybody's mind. The answer to that question has yet to be answered, because nobody is firmly saying, yeah, he's on the trade block, but there are people saying, yeah, he's been floated out there, and there just hasn't been much of a response. Now, again, his performance changes that question, changes that answer. How will Nedeljkovic perform when he returns? Because it's not a guarantee that he comes back from this lower body injury and all of a sudden he is in peak form or in form of what he was last year when he went 8-3-1 to close out the year. And then the last question is the one that has really kind of cropped up in this past week, where, yeah, everybody is excited about Blomqvist. Everybody was excited about Blomqvist. But now that you've seen him at the NHL level, now that the lights don't seem to be too bright for the young netminder, is he ready for more of an opportunity? And you mentioned the 3 goalie situation. That's potentially one of the answers to my next question, which is, how do you get him more opportunities? Because Nedeljkovic was on the road trip with the Penguins. He was practicing in the morning skate, as everybody that was in attendance was saying, there's 3 goaltenders on the ice right now. How long does that persist when and if Alex Nedeljkovic comes back onto the roster? It can't, first and foremost. They have 23 active players. They have 2 players on the injured reserve. To bring somebody back, they'd have to send somebody down. Are you going to go with one extra forward and one extra defenseman? Or are you going to keep 3 goaltenders? Like it's a situation in which the Pittsburgh Penguins seem to be getting more questions, but at the same time, you can't be upset if one of those questions is due to the fact that your young goaltender appears to be more ready than most anticipated coming into the season.
Oh, yeah, he's clearly ready in his 2 games. I mean, love that Hockey Reference has the quality start stat. He's 2 quality starts in 2 starts.
Yeah.
Tristan Jarry has 0 in 2 starts.
They didn't give him a quality start for last night. I mean, let's look at because 2 of those 3 goals, I will say, he probably wants to have back. But at the same time, I thought he settled in well in that third period, especially when he wasn't tested as much. The Penguins settled in as a team well and played good defensive hockey. But 9 saves on 9 shots in the third. I thought the team, and in Jarry specifically, played pretty well with that lead. Now, again, if I was ranking the 4 starts this season, it'd probably go Blomqvist, Jarry last night, then obviously Jarry on the opener. So I would say Blomqvist has had the better of the 2 performances, but I still would have given Jarry a quality start. But I think it also leans into the fact that shots versus goals allowed and save percentage, I think he had an under 900 save percentage last night.
Yeah, and I don't know how the quality starts thing is tabulated. It could be any number of things. It might even literally just be a programmer at Hockey Reference just going, yes or no. Bam. I don't know how it works. I do think it's an interesting stat that they use and that I like looking at, especially for goalies, because it's tough to nail down, a goal. Because wins in the NHL for a goalie can mean something, but let's be honest, sometimes, like in the Oilers or the Avalanche case, they outscore their problems. The Penguins managed to do that last night because they did have a 2-0 lead, and I think this is probably where Jarry lost it. Let in 3 in a row. Regardless of how the team looked in front of them, you lose your lead that quickly of a span, that will pull away from your quote unquote quality starts.
Yeah, and here's what Hockey Reference has as how they determine whether or not a goaltender has a quality start. It starts with a save percentage greater than the average save percentage for the year, or at least an 88.5% save percentage on nights with 20 or fewer shots, which is never going to happen for the Penguins because they just allow too many shots. So his save percentage was lower last night than the average save percentage on the young season, hence the reason he did not get a quality start. But again, I think he responded well, especially after getting punched in the face early, which that first goal, you just have to be able to be over there, right? I mean, you have to be able to track the puck. I'm not going to say it could be 2 things at the same time. It's not all on Jarry. He should have tracked the puck better, but also Ryan Shea. I know Slavkovsky's a big guy. You got to, at the very least, give an effort to get him out of Jarry's line of vision. But, at the end of the day, you look at these goaltenders, and 1 week in, like I said at the beginning of this, I didn't expect there to be answers. I certainly didn't expect there to be more questions 4 games into the season, and that's just where we stand.
No kidding. It's going to be fascinating to see it going forward. It really is. If Jarry can find some rhythm, then yeah, you got to ride your hot. And it is going to be a lot of riding hot hands this year. If you have 1A, 1B, or maybe just 2 1Bs in terms of Jarry and Nedeljkovic, because again, neither really stuck out as true to form starters. I mean, Nedeljkovic did at the end of last season, but you need to see that over the full season. And it was a reclamation project at first, really. Let's be honest with Nedeljkovic last year. It was reclamation. And then in those last 13 games, he proved why he should be the starter or a starter in the NHL. Tristan Jarry, on the other hand, completely lost his job. If in back-to-backs and in the meaningless game 82, you're not playing your 2-time All-Star, I don't know what else to do for you.
Yeah. I mean, describing him as a 2-time All-Star makes it sting a little bit less than describing him as your $5 million goaltender for the next 4 years. But
exactly. And it's the way we had to look at Matt Murray forever. You still had to describe him as a 2-time Cup champion, even when things were starting to fall apart.
I'd have to go back and look at it, but I don't think Matt Murray fell off as much as Tristan Jarry has. I mean, it's in the time since after the trade, yes.
Yeah.
But
that last year was
the trade.
I remember that last year being just brutal on him. I think he got hurt. His dad tragically passed away. Like, it was a tough year for him, and the fans were not happy with him. There were all those weird made-up rumors going around about seeing him in public and stuff. But
Yeah.
It was just a tough year. And regardless of what you think of Jarry now, the better move for the Penguins at the time was probably getting rid of Murray. But man, looking at Jarry now, and you just have to look at him as two-time All-Star, know that ability still can be there.
Yeah.
You just got to find it.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're going to play the hindsight card, let's just go all the way back to the expansion draft and protect that Hall of Fame goaltender that went on to win a Vezina. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, it was him or Matt Murray. The Matt Murray experiment lasted less than 3 years before he was traded. And I like Jonathan Gruden, but you traded him for a fourth liner at best. And now you're sitting here with Tristan Jarry, and you have not won a playoff series with him. And part of that is because of him. I mean, one playoff series, the Islanders series. I don't put the Rangers series on him at all. But regardless, it's going to be, I mean, everybody knew this was going to be a storyline to watch all season long, but the first week has certainly provided a lot of sparks. Let's move over and quickly update before we talk about the bottom six. A quick update on the Iron Penguin Award. Typically, it takes a while for us to start losing names. It takes a while for us to lose multiple names, but this year it just seems like Mike Sullivan is experimenting. Those competitions that we saw in training camp have carried over to the regular season, and they're just kind of switching guys out, substituting guys in and out of the lineup. And because of that, we're starting at 18 last week. We're down to 15. Jesse Puljujärvi was a healthy scratch on Saturday. He is now eliminated from contention. Rutger McGroarty was a healthy scratch on Monday. We will talk about that in our final segment. He is out of the running. And then Jack St. Ivany, another questionable one, scratched on Monday. He is out of the running as well. So down to 15 players. We'll keep an eye on this as the season progresses. But early returns on the new bottom six. That's what I want to get into next because, again, we talked about goaltending. That was a huge question. The bottom six and the power play were the next questions. We're not going to talk about the power play much today, but it's looked good to this point. The bottom six, however, stole the show at Bell Center last night in Montreal. The Penguins scored 14 goals on their 3-game road trip over the weekend. 4 of those goals coming exclusively from the bottom six, and the Penguins now this season are 2-0 when the bottom six registers at least 1 goal. Horwat, do you think this is sustainable for the Penguins' newfound bottom six?
One sure hopes. It's tough to say if it's sustainable this early because, I mean, the way you mentioned the Iron Penguin guys, healthy scratches, it's still an experimental phase, it feels like. I mean, we're still yet to see Blake Lizotte get into the lineup. We're still yet to see what Anthony Beauvillier actually looks like in a bottom six role, if that's where he is destined to go eventually. So I don't know if it's sustainable, but it is definitely successful to start the year and is definitely proving to be a needed commodity considering when they score, they win. Who could have figured that? Who could have thunk it? It'll be fascinating, actually. I'm really interested to see how it can progress and continue getting better. I don't know if I have really too much to say about it other than this is what the Penguins have needed. Bottom six that can score a little bit and contribute. It's going to be big for them going forward. I mean, Lars Eller took that game over at one point yesterday, too, last night. It's without doubt. I mean, Crosby wasn't playing his best stuff. He still hasn't been explosive yet this year, but having someone like Lars Eller that he led the bottom six in scoring last year. It wasn't a high hill to climb, but he did. Mm-hmm. And seeing him take a game over, you need guys that can do that in your bottom six. That's just what you need. On days where, I mean, Malkin's been great all season so far, but on days where, let's say Malkin has an off night and, Crosby happens to also have another off night, you're going to need your bottom six to do something. It's what the Penguins thrived on in 15, 16, and 17. That's why they were so successful. That's why they were so good, is because they had a third line and sometimes a fourth line that can chip in and help. Mm-hmm. And that will be the key for them going forward. I don't know if it's sustainable yet because it still kind of needs to solidify, but it's molding in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm not going to go as far as to say it's going to be an unmitigated success all season, but do I think that what I'm seeing so far is sustainable? Yeah, because I think they've gotten contributions from everywhere. Last night, it was Lars Eller. All the games that Jesse Puljujärvi has played in, he has been noticeably a very good piece for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I don't think Drew O'Connor has played his best hockey. He's down in that unit right now, so I think there's more to come from him. And I think that you also have good players that haven't really gotten a lot of opportunities or are sitting right now. I mean, Rutger McGroarty, we all expect to continue to grow. Valtteri Puustinen has yet to play a regular season game, AHL or NHL this season. I would expect that he has a good year coming up. And then you have those young guys in the minors that you're expecting big things from, guys like Ville Koivunen and Vasily Ponomarev whenever he comes back from the injury. So these are all players. I mean, you can toss in Avery Hayes. I think already has 2 goals in 2 games down at the AHL level. He's a name that you could potentially see coming up and making an impact at certain points, but it's not as much those guys, because I think there's a lot of talent there, and I think they're deep when it comes to options. So if somebody falls off, there's going to be somebody else kind of chomping at their heels to get in the lineup and get some minutes. I think it's the pillars, the people that aren't going to be taken out of the lineup, that have been playing very well. I've liked what I've seen from Kevin Hayes, and it's not like, well, his legs are going to go. His legs aren't there. I mean, he is not fleet of foot. That is not anything that we have ever had to worry about. But he makes the right decisions. He makes smart plays with the puck, and he's been finishing. And I think that that's something that you could see potentially continuing. Nola Chari, if he can stay healthy, he looks night and day different than he did last year. He's still doing all the things that he did right, but he's also making better plays in the offensive zone. He's also playing a bit more physical. I mean, he had the Subway sandwich of the game. I'm going to call it that. I don't care what Edgar Snyder says. It's the Subway sandwich of the game. He wrecked a dude yesterday, and I just love the way that that bottom six is playing. And you mentioned Lars Eller. I mean, he had himself a night, and all of the speculation, sorry, Lars, it's on me. All of the speculation of, well, he's on the last year of his contract. He's probably one of the most tradable assets the Penguins have. Maybe they trade him before the season. Or the more serious conversation that we had, the more kind of nuts and bolts in the lineup conversation we had, oh, he's better off as a 4th line center. So far, and I'm take out yesterday's game, because I understand coming off the heels of a 2-goal game, it's easy to make these statements, but take out yesterday's game. I think he's played very well with the puck, delineating where it goes, running the offensive zone whenever he's on the ice. I thought he set up McGroarty on several opportunities throughout the first handful of games. I thought he has played well and played well off of Jesse Puljujärvi. Lars Eller has just gotten off to a really good start to the season, and it might be, carry over from that Olympic qualifier where he led his home country as captain, scored the winning goal that got them into the Olympics for 2026. He might just be feeding off of that energy and off of that excitement, but it's working really well for the Penguins. And there still might be some speculation that, hey, listen, if the Penguins team-wise goes south this year, Lars Eller's a guy that is probably on the chopping block simply because of his value when it comes to his 200-foot game, but he's certainly had himself a good start to the season and had himself a terrific night in Montreal.
Great start to the year. Yeah, it's that speculation won't go away, win or lose, I feel like, because in my head, I always start rolling through, whenever we start thinking or talking about trades, I start thinking of hockey trades. All right, who's a good player on this team that can be dealt out for another good player? Maybe the change of scenery stuff. I mean, it's the way I thought of Rickard Rakell all of last year. Might be the way I look at Lars Eller this year. Just, you're right, the most movable asset the Penguins have right now.
Yeah.
Sure, he's a little older, but final year of his deal for 20, 30-some games. Well, how many teams are going to take his age into consideration, really, especially if he's performing at a good enough level to fit into someone's bottom six? Mm-hmm. So, I wouldn't let that speculation go away because, hockey trades are always possible. Yeah. And if you look at just the amount of centers the Penguins have, the entire 4th line can play center. If you want to move one of them up to fill that role, go for it. You have multiple centers in the AHL that can reasonably handle the NHL schedule. That includes, you mentioned Ponomarev. There's also Sam Poulin. If you wanted to give Jonathan Gruden a long look, you could. There's plenty of names that the Penguins can fill into center if they end up, giving into the speculation and trading Lars Eller. Again, at the moment, probably just want to see what he could do for the full season.
Yeah. But I don't know about full season, but you're not going to trade him until you see what your team is looking like in January.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, the speculation won't really pick up until all the trade speculation does.
Yeah.
This point, October, November, there's nothing. Maybe we'll hear whispers of players unhappy in their situation by December, but
yeah, if Edmonton continues to look like Edmonton looks, then you can start looking at trades for them to where that's going to provide a spark. But like most teams, you got to wait till Christmas till you actually see trade speculation ramp up.
Yeah, for sure. But regardless, it's always important to keep notes of who could be in that conversation. Heck, we've talked about Jarry already in the same sort of situation in this episode. Lars Eller can be added to that list, and then names will filter from there, and that'll happen across the league. So it's an exciting year for the Penguins if they can have a bottom six that rolls, and maybe there's hockey trades to be made.
Yeah, there's a reason that we started this out, though, with early returns. We're not simply saying that Kyle Dubas hit a home run. We're saying, all right, it looks like he's seeing the ball out of the hand well, right? It looks like he certainly set the Penguins up for success. Early returns are good. How does that continue? And hopefully it continues well. I feel like it looks like it's sustainable, but again, players go on goalless droughts. And if the right player goes on the goalless drought at the right time, it could bring down an entire unit. But as of right now, first 4 games in, that has been a success for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Speaking of bottom sixers, and you mentioned him briefly there when we were talking about, is it sustainable? Well, there's one player that hasn't played yet. And you mentioned that the fourth line has 3 centers on it. Well, the guy that's coming in is another center that could play on the fourth line, and that is Blake Lizotte. Now, he is dealing with a concussion. He has yet to skate since having that concussion happen to him in the Hockeyville game up in Sudbury. The question we asked yesterday for a weekly Pens poll was, whenever that happens, whenever Blake Lizotte comes back from injury, gets taken off of injured reserve, and rejoins the Penguins lineup, who would you send down? Because the Penguins are going to have a decision to make here. I put 3 of the options that they have. They really only have 4 or 5 options that are realistic that they could send down to create that roster spot for Lizotte. Rutger McGroarty barely won this poll at 49%. Valtteri Puustinen had 47%. For a long time, Jesse Puljujärvi had 0. He finished with 1%. So I'm curious as to who actually voted for Puljujärvi. And that was after the game, a game in which Puljujärvi looked great in. So I'm curious as to who voted for Puljujärvi, but 1% say Jesse Puljujärvi should be sent down, and then 3% go to other. Horwat, of these 3, or maybe there's a 4th one that I'm not thinking of as a genuine option, but of these 3, who do you think you would send down if you were Kyle Dubas in this situation?
It'd be Rutger McGroarty. It wouldn't be for long, I don't think. It's tough to jump from college straight to the NHL and have a rhythm. He's got to find a little bit of something. He's got to cook with a little something, I guess. Needs to still mold into professional hockey a little bit. I wasn't surprised he got a healthy scratch for Puljujärvi. Like I said, it's experimental period for the Penguins. This whole month of October might be experiments between goalies, bottom 6, maybe even defense, depending on how that continues to look atrocious, or at least for certain areas. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm not shocked that McGroarty got the healthy scratch, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him get sent down because they want him playing. They want him playing somewhere. Yeah. So they're going to put him on the ice in the AHL if that's where he goes. And it'll be just a matter of keeping an eye on him from there, and it'll be a see you soon for no doubt. So, yeah, it goes to McGroarty. I mean, unless he had to come in and light the world on fire in his first 2 games, essentially, for me to really feel like he deserved to be staying at the NHL level, especially as guys get healthy, especially as his bottom 6 takes off a little bit more. Mm-hmm. He can be a piece of that bottom 6 this year, no doubt. But for the moment, with Blake Lizotte still needing his turn to the experiment, just at the moment, it's his domino to fall.
Yeah, and I think the big thing here is the fact that he's waivers exempt, and I think that's why you look at this and say, listen, Puustinen is a guy that I feel like they're more willing, and again, this is just speculation on my part, but I feel like they're more willing to lose Puustinen than they're leading on. Like, yes, I would rather not lose Puustinen to waivers, but I think they're not as concerned because I feel like Ville Koivunen kind of projects to be a guy that could just fill Puustinen's role. I feel like Ponomarev could potentially be that as well. So now that they have kind of players in similar molds, they're like, well, you don't want to. Let's get that straight. They don't want to lose Puustinen for nothing. But I think that makes them a little bit less worried about putting him on waivers eventually. But I still think that it's McGroarty for the reasons that you said. I mean, he needs to be playing. You're not going to get better. You're not going to improve. You're not going to acclimate to the professional game, as you mentioned, by sitting in the press box. You have to be playing at some point. And again, it's not like the Penguins' bottom six has been performing poorly. Right now, you have Drew O'Connor in the bottom six, who was a top six, top line guy last year in the National Hockey League. He scored 16 goals. Are you going to put in McGroarty over that guy? Puljujarvi, honestly, should not be taken out of the lineup for the foreseeable future the way that he's playing. So you can't put McGroarty in for him, and you're setting him up for failure if you put him on the fourth line. That's just, again, he's not a guy that can't play that style, but it's not the style that best fits him. So you need him in the top nine, and as of right now, there's just nowhere for him to fit. So at that point, you have to get him some playing time, and you have to send him down to the AHL. It's not what I want to see happen, because I think that he earned that spot in the start of the season. I think that he played exceptionally well in the preseason, and he got better as the preseason went on, which is why he earned that opening night roster spot. But there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen right now, and we mentioned it when talking about the bottom six. There are still players that have yet to get that opportunity. Puustinen hasn't been in the lineup. Lizotte coming back from concussion. McGroarty got that 3-game sample size that it seems like all young players get those 3 games before they're taken out of the lineup. I mean, it happened to Gruden. It happened to Poulin on 2 different occasions. Now it happened to McGroarty. Do I think that they send him down immediately? No, but I do think that he's gonna be the domino to fall, as you mentioned. You know, I think you put it perfectly. He's the domino to fall once Lizotte comes back. And honestly, it might even have to be before that, because never mind. Excuse me. Because if Nedeljkovic comes back, Blomqvist is the one that gets sent down in return. So when Lizotte comes back, I think it is McGroarty.
Tell you what, never all lineups are healthy and things are put together, the Penguins could have 2 teams in their organization with pretty stellar lineups. I just pulled up the Wilkes-Barre lineup, and
I believe 1-1 over the weekend, but they lost 7-6 in the opener and didn't start Murashev, which, don't worry about it. Murashev came in, had a really good game the next day, got the Pens the win.
3rd star of the game. Yeah. So, aside from Jimmy Huntington being the first-line center on the Wilkes-Barre Penguins lineup,
he played well.
Yeah.
He played well over the weekend, and honestly, I thought he looked pretty decent at training camp and in preseason. I mean, he didn't look good enough to where I'd say, yeah, let's put him in the NHL, especially considering how many centers are above him. But as an AHL guy, I like Jimmy Huntington.
Yeah,
early returns.
Oh yeah, it's just fascinating looking at this lineup and seeing how many guys have NHL projections or have already played at least a game in the NHL. Yeah. I'm seeing 3 in the forward group that either haven't played, pretty much that aren't NHL, that just aren't going to make the NHL. And it could be 2 if Jimmy Huntington, like you said, does stuff.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't know.
There's a lot of hurdles to climb for him to do stuff at center.
Yeah, exactly. So it's tough, but I'm just looking at the lineup, and that goes for the most part, goes for the defense as well. This is a fascinating team. This is a fascinating organization right now. Too many cooks in the kitchen is a good problem to have, but also let's see it turn into success. Let's see it turn into wins at both levels. The Penguins wanted to build a successful AHL organization. Looking at this lineup, it should be.
Yeah, I mean, name value and on paper is great. You got to see it translate, though. That's been an issue. I mean, if you go back in the Crosby era, look at the early 2010s. Name value, those teams, phenomenal. Guess what happened in the playoffs? Nothing. And that was a big issue. So we'll see how it all plays out. I think that we can all agree that the AHL team is more exciting than it has been in multiple seasons. So you have to give credit to both Kyle Dubas and the actual general manager of that team, which is Jason Spezza, the assistant general manager of the Penguins, and obviously the entire hockey ops staff, because they all have a hand in that. But, it's early in the season. Both teams have gotten some wins. Both teams have suffered some losses, but there's going to be plenty of storylines to follow. None more pressing and none more interesting than the Penguins goaltending situation at the National Hockey League level. That is going to be something that we're going to continue to likely cover and talk about on these episodes. But thank you guys so much for tuning into this one. Remember, you can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, tell all of your friends, or you can find us anywhere you get your podcast from. We'll see you guys next time.